The question becomes, how can you position the I'm too busy in your intake conversation in a way that makes them feel treasured, valued, appreciated as your client, but also has them give you the space that's needed for you to be able to handle all the things that you have to handle until you have more team members to be able to do the work. Hi, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Crushing Chaos with Law Firm Mentor podcast, where today we're going to talk about marketing messages to manage your growth. So I think we all have had that experience where you start growing your law firm, you start getting more leads in, all of a sudden you get really busy, you don't have time to handle it all, and you think, oh my God, I just don't have the bandwidth for more cases right now, right? But at the same time, you also realize that you don't want to turn off the spigot, right? Once you finally figured out the right recipe for you in your market to get the right type of clients in and the volume that you require, you suddenly realize, okay, I want to have more business. I want to grow my business, but I can't instantaneously hire another attorney, or I can't instantaneously bring in someone who can learn a very complex area that maybe doesn't have a lot of practitioners, or I can't bring in the quality of attorney at the skill level that I require to be able to hand off immediately. I would have to train and develop that person, whoever that person is, just based on what I think is available in my marketplace, right? So when you have that challenge, what do you do with all of that, all of that opportunity that's coming in your door? You don't want to say, we're not taking new clients right now, right? There are people that do that, but most law firms don't do that. And historically, I think it really is because of a fear that as soon as we say no, the universe will stop saying yes, right? We'll stop getting more leads in. We'll stop having all those opportunities that we think we're going to have. So it really becomes a challenge for us. And for most of us, we don't want to say no to new business. So how can you handle that while you're in that growth state, right? While you are looking to hire, you've got ads out, you've got recruiters on it, you're messaging, you're doing all the things to get that right candidate in, but they're not here yet. What do you do until you are staffed up to handle the volume of work, right? If you just continually bring in more cases than you can handle, at some point you're going to burn out your team. Perhaps you're going to burn out yourself, and not only burn out in the sense of just being mentally exhausted and not at your best, but also burn out in the sense that you're going to miss something, right? You can only add so many more details to manage into your current list of things to manage, even when you have a highly systematized law firm. And we know that most law firms are not that. But if you are doing everything right, you still can get to a place where the volume of your ecosystem just cannot hold more, right? You just are going to tap out. So today we're going to actually talk about what to say on the phones when you are getting prospects to call your office. They're either speaking with you because they were personally referred, or they're going right to your intake department, the preferred way of handling it. What do you do when there's just not the capacity for you to take on new cases? Well, for a lot of lawyers, the major concern that they have is, I'm going to say I can't take it right now. And then the prospective client is going to go down the street to somebody else because they need help right now. And I don't want to tell them I'm not taking new cases right now, because that sounds like don't ever come back, right? That sounds very limiting. But the reality is that, and I've said this many, many times when we talk about marketing, right? Anyone who's followed this podcast or heard me speak in the various different places that we speak at all the legal conferences around the country and even around the world, you know that we talk often about the reality that everyone wants what everyone wants, right? The captain of the football team. If you position yourself as the captain of the football team that everyone wants, it is going to attract more people to you. It is not going to detract from your current rate of growth. So when you think about that, you have to think about that as a golden opportunity for you to be able to shift the messaging in your conversations, in your intake, and to a certain degree, even in your marketing. But in your marketing, we're really talking about once people are in your ecosystem. How can you start to engage with prospective new clients in a way that positions you as the captain of the football team? And this really is about altering your message to capitalize on the fact that you are too busy, right? So I want you to think about this, right? There's challenges with growth and being too busy and not being busy enough. When we don't have enough business, what we tend to think is, I can't spend money. I have to be in a state of constant chase. Every person that comes in has to become my client because I can't afford for them not to become my client because I got bills to pay, right? So that tends to create a problematic narrative as well. Then the narrative becomes one of, again, desperation. You're saying everything that you can to get the person through the door, even if there are red flags. You start to tell the person that you will give them a discount. You start kind of over delivering to the client and creating an imbalance in the relationship before they even become your client, so that when they become your client, they then expect instantaneous access to you. They expect you to over deliver all of the time. And they really start to treat you as almost like their personal slave, right? They don't have any level of respect for you as the authority and the attorney. You are really their doer, right? Their bottle washer, chief cook and bottle washer, right? And when you create that type of relationship, you have more difficult clients to manage, and you also thus don't want to work with them. So you have clients that you have a lot to do for and that you don't really want to do it for. But on the flip side, when you have too much work, what tends to happen is you start to give short shrift to your clients. And that also creates a problem in the attorney-client relationship because you could be underserving them ethically. But even if you're doing what's minimally required ethically, you're not likely giving them the customer service experience that they want to have, right? You're not giving them the feeling that they are valued by you, that they're getting your time and attention and your care to their case. They very much feel like you are one and done, right? Treat them and street them, right? As we've said on previous shows, right? So you want to avoid that. And the question becomes, how can you position the I'm too busy in your intake conversation in a way that makes them feel treasured, valued, appreciated as your client, but also has them give you the space that's needed for you to be able to handle all the things that you have to handle until you have more team members to be able to do the work. So the thing that we're going to really focus in on when we talk about this idea of marketing messaging and how to change your marketing messaging is that you want to start, again, positioning yourself as a hot commodity that is out of reach. Now, out of reach is not the same thing as out of touch. Out of touch says to a client, I'm paying for a service that I can't get, right? I am needing something that you promised to deliver to me that you're not actually delivering to me. Out of touch is what will lead to grievance and malpractice. So we don't want to be out of touch with our clients. But out of reach means that the matters that they have brought to you are being serviced. They're being handled appropriately by whomever is supposed to be handling them, but not necessarily by you. And when they are handled by you, they should feel extra special. Okay. It's not to say that your paralegal, your legal assistant, your associate, whomever is touching their file when you're not, that those people are not special, right? We're not talking about special in the spiritual sense, right? That we're all special in the eyes of God. We're not talking about that, right? We're talking about you being special because you have an elevated status that they secured by virtue of hiring your law firm. And so whomever is the lawyer handling the matter should be treated with a level of esteem that says, I get something really special when the lawyer is touching my file. And the way that we can start to condition people to have that thought, even before they come in for their first consultation, their sales consultation, could be an attorney-client consultation, however you are structuring your law firm sales process. But before they come in, they should already have that I'm getting something special mindset. So how do you do that? Well, the first thing you do is you want to talk about how in high demand the lawyer is. It's very important to weave that into the conversation, right? And that's why you need to have a very well-trained intake professional on the phones. And this person needs to have the ability to ebb and flow with conversation, right? You want to have a script, but your script should not be, we read directly off of the word by word script. And if somebody asks a question that takes us off the script, we're suddenly flummoxed. No, this is talking points, right? There are things that you have to cover, and there are things that you need to convey, and that will happen in the course of an organic conversation that you will train your intake team to have. So when we think about this particular conversation, this conversation has to be something more than just attorney is really busy right now. This has to be attorney is in such high demand that attorney is not available Monday through Friday, 9 to 5, right? Or whatever the hours are that you would normally be doing consults. You want to fit in this person, and you want this person to vie for the attorney's attention. Again, captain of the football team. So how do we get your prospective clients to vie for you? Again, this is about being out of reach, okay? Just barely within arm's length, right? But not quite. This is something that the prospective client has to work for. Now, I can already hear the detractors out there. I already know the objection that's coming, and lawyers are going to say, hey, wait a minute. We're already out here competing for business. The last thing that I want to do is make it feel to a prospective client like they have to work for me. Like I want them to feel honored to come in and meet with me, but I also don't want them to be chased away. And that's the reason why this is very subtle and very nuanced, but you have to say it in a way that makes the prospective client feel lucky to have you, right? So that might sound something like this. Miss Smith, we're so happy that you called, and, hearing about everything that is going on in your world right now, I am so very happy that you called us because I know that attorney so-and-so can help you with this. There's one little challenge we have right now. You called here because attorney so-and-so has a great reputation for handling XYZ problem. Right now, she's handling so many of them that it is really hard to get on her calendar, right? Because she just, she's in very high demand. But I will tell you this, your matter really touched my heart. Hearing what you're going through, I can't fathom how much resilience you have had to display to be able to get through that. And I want to go to attorney so-and-so and make some room on her calendar. So let me do this, okay? I think I can probably squeeze you in for Saturday. Now, if I get you on her calendar for Saturday, you need to be prepared to move forward, okay? Because I'm going to be telling her she needs to come in on a Saturday to meet with you. And I'm going to be telling her that your matter is one that should jump the line, right? Right now, she has a waiting list. Right now, there are people that have been calling and we just can't get them in. But your matter really, really drew me in, and I want to help you, right? So just think about that conversation, right? If we shift into kind of analyzing what I just said, I want you to think about how that landed, right? What were you communicating? Well, you communicated high demand. You said that outright, but you also communicated that there is a waiting list, right? People are lining up for this and they are not able to get it, right? Nothing creates a desire for something like knowing that you can't have it, right? That is a very, very common sales strategy. Act now, right? There's a limited supply. Once it's gone, it's gone. You're never going to be able to get it again. So just think about those talking points that we hear when we're talking about anything that's on sale or anything that a distributor, a company, a manufacturer, or retailer is trying to sell. They sell it with the idea of scarcity, right? There's only so many of them and supplies are limited, and act now before your time is going to pass to have it, right? So you're basically going to convey that through your languaging around this topic of the attorney's availability. The other thing that we said is we gave the opportunity for some limited amount of time on a weekend. Now, there are some of you that are lifestyle lawyers. They're never going to work on a weekend. If that's your choice, that's your choice, right? You would just not be able to use this particular strategy. But for those of you that are actively growing your law firms, you're probably putting in time on Saturday, whether you want to or not, right? That's just a part of how you're getting everything done at this point, especially if you're overloaded. So if you're in that state of overload and you're going to be working on Saturday anyway, then in that time for a Saturday morning consultation. And here's the thing. When you tell somebody the time that they can be seen is an inconvenient time. And by inconvenient, I mean inconvenient relative to the normal course of business, right? If your law firm is available to the public 9 to 5, Monday through Friday, we know that lawyers work outside that time period, but clients are able to come to your doors and see a human 9 to 5, Monday through Friday, or they're able to schedule an appointment 9 to 5, Monday through Friday. And suddenly you're not available during that time because you're doing so much other already prepaid work during that time period, but you will carve out time for them on a weekend that gives them a feeling of being special. And it says that this is inconvenient to the lawyer. Now, you're not going to say to the prospective client, it's going to be really inconvenient for this lawyer to come in and meet with you on Saturday. But if your office is available 9 to 5, Monday through Friday, and suddenly the lawyer is going to be told by their team that there is something so compelling about your matter, whatever this intake professional has heard, that has led her to say, this matter should be getting priority, that is going to, again, compel the feeling that the prospective client is special, and so special that they should be seen at times that are normally not accessible by the public to the attorney. So I want you to think about that and in terms of what that communicates to a prospective client. The other thing that I want you to think about is the idea that the intake professional is going to pitch the case to the lawyer. Okay. Now, the way that you want to talk about this, the way that your intake professional should be trained to talk about this is, attorney so-and-so is really busy. Attorney so-and-so is really dedicated to his or her clients. And attorney so-and-so only takes certain cases. I, the person who works with attorney so-and-so, I, as the intake professional, have their ear, right? I can persuade them to take your case. I can persuade them to hear you out. I can persuade them to make space for you. Now, by virtue of you saying that, you're communicating several things. One, you're already planting the seeds to the person that is hearing that the staff is a powerful source that connects them to the attorney. Right? It's the idea that, just as we said before, we talked about the idea that the attorney is special because they have a certain status. And that doesn't mean other people are not special. Their specialness is just different, right? So the specialness of this intake professional is that she has the ear of the attorney. So if she decides to say, hey, I know you don't have any room on your schedule right now, but you have got to make an exception for this person, you are again filling the prospective client with the feeling that they are special, that their matter matters to you. And you, as the intake professional in this instance, is positioning him or herself to really be a liaison, right? i.e., no one gets to the attorney except through me. Okay. And I'm using that reference, somewhat of a common saying in Christianity. And I'm not saying it because I'm a religious person, but I'm saying it because I want you to have that thought process of, there's the special person, and then there's like the layer that you have to get to that attorney through. So you have to go through people that work in the office to get to the attorney. We talk about positioning this way in a host of different ways, but it is especially important for you as the law firm owner, right? You need to have that layer of someone is critically important that stands between the public and the attorney, whether that be the receptionist, the marketing assistant, the office administrator, the CFO, but you are not available simply because someone desires your time and attention. You are something special. You are something that is of limited supply. And the more that you start to embed messaging around, someone is going to get you, the prospective client, into the orbit of the attorney, the more important that person becomes, right? So you start to now create a relationship for this prospective client before they even get here that says they have somebody who is so important, so high up the food chain that ultimately it takes another human being to even get to them, right? Like I can't just walk in and see the CEO of Pfizer. Similarly, I can't just walk in and see the CEO of John Doe Law Firm. I have to go through the appropriate channels, right? And again, that elevates the esteem of the attorney because John Doe attorney might very well be sitting at his desk or at the front desk when you walk in because he's used to being available. This attorney, John Doe attorney CEO, is not, right? Everyone can't get to him. So you have to think about that. Now, we talked about, again, the idea of this being a limited amount of time. You don't want to say, well, it's Saturday, so I could see the person for 2 or 3 hours, unlike how I handle my consults during the week where I'm running from thing to thing. You want it to be a limited time because you also want that person to have the understanding that your time on the weekend is also devoted to your clients. Now, again, I can already hear the objection. So before you come for my throat, understand, I know that a lot of you are in the era of time that you're really thinking about lifestyle, right? And lifestyle law firm includes having time for rest and not being 24, hours available. And I still very much promote you creating the lifestyle that you desire around your law firm. Whether you are telling your clients you're unavailable because you're at a beach or you're unavailable because you simply choose to be unavailable doesn't really matter. You have every right to be unavailable. But what I'm talking about here is giving them the feeling that you work hard for whomever is lucky enough to have you as their representative. And so that time might be the weekend solely because during the week you are a devoted parent who is going to after school activities. It might be because during the week you're scheduled for trial. It could be because you're taking on so many cases because you love what you do that you have to do work on the weekend. Whatever leads to that time on the weekend, most people intellectualize the work week as the work time and the weekend as the rest time. And so if they're going to eclipse some of your rest time, that needs to happen for a special reason. But they can't have it unfettered and unlimited. They get a certain amount of time. And that certain amount of time should come with an expectation that if you're going to take my weekend, you ought to be serious when you get here. Okay? So what does that mean? That means tell the prospective client, listen, I'm going to make the pitch for you. I'm going to do everything I can to get attorney so-and-so to take your case. But ultimately, it is his or her decision, right? They are the legal professional. They decide. And if you come in and take their time on a weekend, be prepared, right? This is an opportunity for you to jump the line. But for you to jump the line, that means they're going to have to be really committed to your case. And that means you have to come in with a $25,000 retainer, right? And give it to them cold that way. By the way, I remember when I first started using this strategy, and this was many, many moons ago before I even owned my own law firm. I have been the proud owner of Williams Law Group since 2013. And this was a few years before that when my career really took off and I was just kind of choking on work. And I remember hearing my then secretary on the phone and I would say, Elaine, you've got to dial this in. Like people can't be told that, I can see them, 7 weeks from Thursday. But maybe we can use that 7 weeks from Thursday mindset to say, well, if I were to book you right now based on when she's next available, it would be 7 weeks from Thursday. But here's what I'm going to do, right? And she would tell people that. She would tell people high demand, hard to get on her schedule, but, she goes hard for her client. So once you become a client, you get her time. But getting her time means you have to become a client. It is really hard to become her client right now because we have so many clients and she does this work all over the state and yada, 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 right? And so the client has this big buildup before they have even learned what would be required, whether or not you're going to take the case and so forth. But then once that conversation happens, right? Once that immediate, okay, we're going to get you on the calendar happens, then it becomes show up with, here's what's going to happen. You're going to show up with X, Y, and Z. You're going to have this amount of money available to start the representation. You're only going to have this amount of time. So you're going to send us in advance this information. And I remember when Elaine and I first devised this strategy, it literally would be, I would have back-to-back appointments. We'd schedule them on the hour, every hour for like 5 hours. And I knew I was going to take away 5 new clients. And I knew whatever I took in as a client for the first half of the day, the second half of the day would be starting up all of the work, i.e. requesting that matters be adjourned or sending in notices of appearance or whatever was required for me to get started. But a lot of that information my team had already gotten. So I knew what I was going to be expected to do and what would be required and what I would need to know to decide if I was going to take a case in that. Now, this is also something that you would tailor if you have a non-attorney as your salesperson in a law firm, right? You can still create that out of touch, out of reach, but not out of touch sequence when you are selling through a non-attorney. The difference then becomes that you're going to have that conversation through a salesperson, right? So the salesperson then becomes the one. The intake professional might want to signal it a little bit. Oh, well, attorney so-and-so, we're booking them pretty far out, but let's see what we can do. You're going to go ahead and meet with our director of client services, so-and-so, who is our salesperson here at the law firm. And that person is going to do a needs assessment, evaluate your matter, determine who would be appropriate to handle that matter, et cetera. But, our attorneys are in really high demand right now, et cetera, right? And then once the salesperson comes and has that conversation with a prospective client, then it becomes the same pitch instead of, I can't see you until. It becomes, this attorney, we right now are booking pretty far out. So if you want to get on his or her calendar, you're going to have to pony up, right? This allows you, by the way, to have a conversation that is much more rooted in value because the value becomes presumed, right? If you do this well and you structure your conversation in a way that embeds that the person is out of reach, but not out of touch, that the person is in high demand, that there's a wait list for the person, that ultimately getting on their calendar is a privilege, that it is a challenge to get there, and thus the team member has to ultimately make the pitch to warrant you getting there. Sometimes you can do this actually during the sales call, i.e. salesperson steps out and says, let me go see. I'm going to try to do what I can to have attorney so-and-so be the one to represent you. And that, by the way, would be in situations where you either have a personal referral or if somebody comes in asking for a particular attorney, even if you have a multitude of attorneys on your team. But the idea is that you want to build in the idea of scarcity, right? There's only so much of this person to go around, and I want to win it. And if you are subtle enough in embedding that conversation through your intake person, and then again through your salesperson, then what ends up happening is the person's time and energy is starting to think, but it's not thinking, can I afford this person? It's not thinking, do I want to work with this person? It's not thinking, is this person able to help me? It's not thinking what's going to be the outcome of my case. It's thinking, how can I get them, right? It becomes a competitive drive inside. And one of the things that I know a lot of people fear is that they are manipulating others through using sales strategy in the conversations that they have. But here's the thing. If you're going to ethically and professionally represent this client, and you know that you're going to give this person what is required to be able to handle their matter, and you know you're going to charge them fairly, you're going to give them a great result, they're going to have a greater likelihood of winning their case with you on their side versus another attorney or even doing it alone, then all that you have really done is be able to use your words in a way that urges action. That's what a sales conversation is. It is urging action through the use of your words to compel upon the person that they should take action to move forward with you, right? So no dishonesty, right? You're not making up the fact that you are out of reach right now. You are out of reach right now because you're overloaded, or else we wouldn't be having this conversation. But the way that you're going to ultimately show up with integrity with your client to do that is you're going to do what's necessary to get that person bought into you before they get here. Then once they get here, depending on what type of matter it is. So obviously at some point, a lawyer does have to assess what kind of matter is this? Can we help them? And how quickly do we have to help them? But you're able to then give them more realistic deadlines, right? One of the things I see a lot of lawyers doing is overpromising and underdelivering, right? You're so urgent to make the client happy that you tell the client any and everything that they need to hear in order to feel better in the moment, which is, I'm going to get this to you tomorrow. And then what happens? You can't, right? And then the client doesn't receive whatever it is by tomorrow. They feel dejected. They're upset. And then it goes on. And that intends to infect your relationship with the client. You don't want to overpromise, and you certainly don't want to misrepresent to people. But once they have thought in their mind to have you, you're of higher value. So that carries through your entire relationship. And that allows you to say, okay, it's going to be about 3 weeks before we're able to file such and such. In the meantime, I want you to be working on this. I want you to be researching this. I want you to be preparing this for us so that 3 weeks from now, when we prepare your documents, ultimately, you're going to be able to get what's needed, right? You're going to have a greater likelihood of success on the merits of your case as a result of this preparatory work that gives you, the attorney, more bandwidth, more time, more runway, and allows the client to feel great about it in the process, right? That's the win-win. And you can oftentimes buy yourself more time by saying, look, I just can't get to this, so you're going to have to wait. And once the client has paid money and is now working with you, it is harder for them to say, well, bump this. That doesn't feel good. I'm out, right? More often than not, they just feel that, but they stuff it down because they're like, well, this is my attorney. I have to deal with it. And that doesn't create a great relationship, and it doesn't maintain the client for future referrals. So in order to keep a happy client, you have to think about what they need to hear in order to feel good about whatever is going to happen. And if you are overloaded and overextended, you need to develop marketing messages that are going to help you to manage the growth in your company before it runs you over. All right, everyone, you are listening to the Crushing Chaos with Law Firm Mentor podcast. I'm Allison Williams, your host, and we'll see you on the next episode.